In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the fuel pump on this Ford F-250. Let's get started. On the driver's side of the engine compartment, right behind the coolant overflow tank next to the brake master cylinder, you'll see the fuse box or the junction box that controls most of the electronics that have to do with the engine and transmission. On the front side of it, you'll see this tab that can be a little tricky to get to, but if you pry on it, it should lift up the cover for you. With the cover off, you'll see all the relays and fuses, and this right here, number 18, is the relay for the fuel pump that we have to pull so we can disable power to the fuel pump and therefore relieve fuel pressure. It's usually pretty tight in here space-wise, so getting some needle nose pliers on the relay will be the best way to get this out. Wiggle it back and forth and pull straight up. If you're gentle enough, it won't break, and there is the relay. At this point, we should have no power going to the fuel pump. Put the key in the ignition and crank the engine over. It might start, but it should die out pretty quick. For us, it didn't even start, which is great. Fuel pressure has been relieved. Make sure you take the key out so that the battery doesn't die, and let's continue with our job. The first thing you want to do is support the shield that covers the fuel tank. That way we can unbolt it safely without it falling down. The shield is held on with several 10mm headed bolts on the inner part of the shield. This is the drive shaft here. On the front, you'll see one bolt hanging onto this strap. Now, because the shield is slotted, I'm actually going to put this one back just a few threads. What this will allow me to do is remove it by sliding it out, but then putting it back will be a whole lot easier because you can easily line this side up without worrying about it falling off. You'll see the same bolt further back on the rear strap. Do the same thing, just loosen it up most of the way. All right. On the frame side, you'll see two 10mm bolts on each strap. Remove them all. These have to be completely removed. Slowly drop the shield. My strap is broken in the back here, so I actually have a pull jack supporting the tank. But at this point, there we go. The shield should come down. Remove it. I'm going to bring my support back up onto the fuel tank. Put a little bit of pressure on it. To unbolt the straps, there will be 13mm bolts holding them onto the frame. The procedure is exactly the same for both front and rear straps, by the way. My rear strap is broken, so as soon as I pull this bolt out, this piece will fall right off. But that's okay, we're here to replace it. And the front strap, same thing. The other side of this rear strap bolts on to the cross member, also a 13mm headed bolt. Now at this point the strap will come off, so be careful, make sure you catch it. And remove the front strap with this 13mm bolt over here. Now let's loosen up the filler neck from the filler hose that leads to the fuel tank. Use an 8mm socket or a wrench and loosen up this clamp. There we go. You don't have to remove it, just loosen it. I'm going to stick a pick in here to break free the filler hose from the filler neck. And I'm going to spray a little bit of rust penetrant in there once I get my pick in, just so it can help break the seal free. It's usually stuck from being on there for a long time. And now you can just walk the pick around, and that should do the job. Try not to stab the hose though. That seems to be mostly broken free. Let's start lowering the tank. Slowly lower the tank. I'm gonna use a pry bar and rest it up against the leaf spring so I can pry the hose off. There we go. And now with the filler neck hose disconnected, the big one, the main one that is, we have to disconnect this line right here, which is connected, if you follow the routing, to the smaller filler neck hose, but disconnecting it off the filler neck won't do anything because it's still clipped onto the frame. So we just have to go right here on the tank. And I already sprayed this clip with rust penetrant. Usually you want to squeeze it in, so I'm using some pliers. Once you squeeze it, you should be able to slide it right off just like that. Rust penetrant helps because a lot of times these clips get stuck on here. Looking at the fuel pump, you'll see a couple different things going on here. This connector, this one, and of course the wiring harness. So I'm going to spray them with rust penetrant just like I did on the other line. Doesn't matter which one you start with. For me, this one's easiest to reach first, so I'm going to get it out of the way. Get some pliers on here, squish on the tabs, and hopefully we'll slide off with minimal effort. There we go. Some fuel will come out, just so you know. And now this hose, same thing, one clip on each side. Follow the wiring harness up and unplug the fuel pump connector. Now with everything disconnected, lower the fuel tank slowly. Make sure everything is actually coming down as it should. We have another line here. There's one more line towards the front of the tank. It's the same as all the other ones. You just pinch the yellow tabs and it should come right off. There we go. All right, continue lowering the tank. There we go. With the fuel tank on the ground, get rid of all this debris that's around the lock ring. I have compressed air, so I'm just going to blow this off. If you don't, spray it with something, but you don't want all of this going into the tank once you take this off. I'm also going to put a bunch of rust penetrant on it. That should help this break free. It is fairly rusty. Now take a punch, preferably a brass punch, so that you don't make any sparks. Tap the lock ring off so that you can remove the fuel pump assembly. Just go around from side to side so that you can put even pressure on it. There we go. Pull this off. I'm going to use some more compressed air now before all of this actually comes up. I'm going to hold the fuel pump down so that I can blow all of this away. Now lift this up. We'll have to reach inside and unclip the fuel pump assembly from the bottom of the tank. I'll show you exactly in a second what I'm doing. All right, so here it is. As you pull it up, try to tilt it so all the fuel can drain out of it. Now what I did is I pressed on these two tabs here, one and one, simultaneously, and pulled it up. As you can see, it hooks on the bottom of the tank, so that is exactly what you have to do to unlock it. Pay attention to the float. I'm going to try and drain the rest of that fuel in here. And there's your fuel pump. Now if you had your new pump, slide the float in first, and then this sock, filter, whatever you want to call it, actually has to go down in at an angle. So once you bring it in, tilt it back like that and hook it into its slot. You'll see that it's slotted down there. Very difficult for me to show you, but the bucket that the pump sits in will have an opening for that sock. Once that's in, slide it down until it clicks. Up here where the gasket goes, I'm gonna blow some compressed air, trying to not get any debris inside the tank though. Your new pump should come with a new gasket, so always install that. Just like this. Drop it down into the groove. And then when you put the top of the pump in, make sure you line up this tab with this arrow on the tank. There's only one arrow, so you can't get that wrong. Put it down in position. The ring is non-directional, so slide it over, line it up with the tabs, and press it down. Of course, turn it clockwise to lock it in. Just get it started. Once it's started properly, take that brass punch, drive it in all the way. Going back and forth from side to side, make sure that the pressure is being evenly distributed on this lock ring as you try to tap it in. Oh, that's it, it just popped into place. You notice that it's locked in when not only does it stop spinning, but the center grooves are lined up with these bumps on the ring. That's in. Now bring the fuel tank back up. Let's get these lines reconnected. There we go. That's on. Let's plug in the fuel pump assembly. Get that connector seated and make sure it clicks. Now let's get the main fuel lines reconnected. Make sure they click and lock on. There we go. Lift up the tank some more until you can reach this line at the rear. Get this reconnected. Now bring the fuel tank up. Make sure the filler neck hose is routed properly up and over the frame. Now let's get the front strap in. This one is going to have a J-nut that is clipped on to the frame side of it. Slide that part in first, and then to bring this forward like that, kind of put it up and over the drive shaft and make sure it lines up like that, which it does. So have a bolt ready and try to line this up. There we go. If you look from the other side of the frame, you should be able to see it go into the J-nut. Now that this is started, let's tighten this up. 13mm socket, snug it up. 30 foot-pounds is the torque for these bolts. All right. On the other side, I'm using a pry bar up against the strap and pushing on the drive shaft, which obviously is not ideal, but it's the only way I have to get this to line up. Try to go on the edge of the strap so that you can have space to put in the bolt. Have it ready and thread it on. There we go. Snug this up as well. 30 foot-pounds for this one as well. All right, take that rear strap and bring it in. This one gets clipped onto the outside of the frame on this side and of course on that cross member on the inside. All right, get this started. Once it's started, snug it up. Also 30 foot-pounds. Bring the strap up on the other side and we'll have to use a pry bar on this one. Once it's started, snug it up. 30 foot-pounds for this one as well. All right, now remove your support. Get the filler neck hose reconnected. There we go. Make sure it's bottomed out all the way. Let's tighten up that clamp. This time I'm going to put it in a more accessible spot. Just give it a snug. That's it. If you can't move the hose around, that's plenty tight. If you over tighten it, it'll strip out and then you'll need to replace it. Let's bring in the shield. There we go. Slide it over the slotted bolts here. And have these bolts ready. So you can start them in, that way the shield can stay up here. Snug these up. The torque for these bolts is 16 foot-pounds. With our job complete, put the relay back into its spot. There we go, press it all the way down. And then of course, bring the cover in. Make sure you don't catch any wires in the way. Lock that on. And what you're gonna wanna do next is stick the key in the ignition, turn it to the on position. Wait a few seconds, shut it off. Turn it back to the on position. This primes the fuel system and lets that fuel pump run. Shut it back off and back on. And at this point, if you turn the key to start it, it should start. It might stumble a little bit as it tries to build up that fuel pressure, but it should start. There we go. Awesome, job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.